Welcome to Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, the podcast where nostalgia comes alive. Since July of 2021, Jake and his friends have interviewed professionals in the worlds of acting, directing, writing, puppeteering, and many more. Who will they be chatting with in this week's interview? Find out in this Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show episode.
Hey everyone, welcome to this episode of Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, where nostalgia comes alive. I'm your host, Jake Deffinbaugh. With me today, as always, our co-hosts, Chris Bixby and Matt Bingel. How you guys doing?
We're good. Jakey, how are you?
Awesome. I'm doing great, thank you.
Great, and who do we have today?
What we have today, well, she's a voice actress, she's also a voice director, and as well as a vocal coach. She's a part of lots of projects, which we will definitely talk about, including Arthur, Sagwa, Wimzie's House, and a bunch of others. Please welcome Holly Gauthier-Frankel. Happy to have you here, Holly. How are you?
Thank you. I'm doing well. I'll give you a little, it's Gauthier, just so you know. I'll give you that little French soupçon right away. But it's very nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes, a pleasure.
Happy to have you here.
Happy to have you here.
Yes. So to kick things off, we know who you are, but for those who don't, would you care to introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah. I'm a voice actor. I've been a voice actor since I was about 7 years old. I'm located in Montreal, Quebec, in Canada. And I come from kind of a musical family. My parents were both professional musicians, and my mom is a singer. My dad was a drummer. My stepdad's a drummer. My brother's a drummer. We're all kind of artists in the family. And so we just sort of naturally progressed that when I was about 7, I started doing singing for commercials on the radio jingles, which doesn't really exist anymore. But we would do children's choruses. And then that sort of just morphed into getting auditions for voice acting. In those days, there was a lot of dubbing in Montreal. Now there's been a resurgence of dubbing with, I guess with the pandemic, Netflix has a lot of content and there's a lot of dub movies coming out. So I pretty much just started when I was 7 and I haven't stopped ever since then. And yeah, I've been very fortunate to get to work on all kinds of different cartoons and movies and commercials and everything. It's been great.
Awesome.
Nice. So can you talk about what your background was like and how did you grow up?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up speaking English in a predominantly French-speaking province. So it's a bit of a strange existence here in Montreal. Montreal is a fairly cosmopolitan city. There is like an amount of bilingualism that happens, but there really is like a divide between the French side and the English side. I've done a bit of crossover into French. I do some work in French. I do speak French, but professionally speaking, I was pretty much always doing English stuff. So there's a real little niche here for that, luckily. And I did, regular schooling. I didn't do theater school or anything like that because my parents were sort of involved in the arts. I had access to some private teachers for voice, and I studied dance, and I really wanted to do musical theater when I was young. So I wanted to do kind of Broadway stuff. So I trained to be able to do that. I had a bunch of different tracks going at the same time. I had my singing track and I had my dancing track, and I was doing the voice acting. So I was kind of getting a sense of it all. And in my teens, I got some agents and started getting more work. And yeah, basically now I'm in my 40s and I've evolved into being able to be fortunate enough to do voice directing as well. For video games, for animated series, for a lot of dubbing as well. I'm going to be teaching some classes. I do coaching, as you said. I help people do voice demos and give advice to people who want to get started in the voice work industry. But because I'm in such a specific place, and in Canada, it's the advice kind of morphs depending on where you are. The scene is different in every state, in every province, in each country. But yeah, That's a bit about me. I've just sort of always been involved in the arts. I feel very lucky.
Awesome.
Wonderful.
That's awesome.
So growing up before becoming a voice actress, did you have any favorite cartoons you watched as a kid?
Oh yeah. I mean, Yeah, I was really a Disney kid for sure. I was deeply immersed in the world of The Wizard of Oz. My dad had a
Nice.
VHS recorder when we were growing up, like in the early 80s, which I think was pretty rare for a lot of families at the time. So he would tape a lot of stuff for me, a lot of different cartoons, a lot of Looney Tunes, a lot of Hanna-Barbera cartoons. And I remember there was, and I've tried to find it since actually. I don't know who can do a deep dive on this, but it's a very specific, I believe it was a 50th anniversary special about Hanna-Barbera specifically. And it showed a lot of those actors in the studio. I found one, it's not the one, there's two. Anyway, I can't remember the name of it, but it was like a behind the scenes with Dawes Butler and a lot of very, very old school kind of voice actors. So
Oh wow.
I remember watching that a lot because I had it on VHS and being very fascinated by that and a lot of the Disney shorts.
Oh yes.
I liked a lot of those. I think I just always had that in my head as a kid. And 7 is pretty young to start, so I think my childhood and my job kind of merged. And I didn't start doing kind of funny cartoony voices until I was about 10 or 11 though. So I would say that I had a grace period. I just sort of started singing, but I was very musical. I played piano. I loved running around the house making up actually podcasts as we now know them. I had a little Fisher Price recording device, and I would make up all kinds of stories and sing little
Oh wow.
songs and interview
Nice.
Oh,
my
wow.
brother.
Oh,
And
that's
yeah,
cool.
so I think I was always an audio kid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If anybody can find that special, please send it our way. Thank you.
Yeah,
That would be cool to check out.
I can't remember. Honestly, I must have been watching it in around 1982 or 3. So at that time it was either a 30th anniversary at that time or a 50th anniversary. But I think anyway, it's really niche, and I don't know. It would probably be on somebody's on a VHS somewhere. It wouldn't be something that Hanna-Barbera had ever reissued. And I don't actually know if there was anything, controversial or non-PC like
Yeah.
about it. So I don't know if it would have
Hmm.
been, allowed to be shown or whatever. But it
Right.
was definitely an interesting nugget. It permeated a lot of my childhood. So
Nice.
yeah,
Very nice.
yeah.
Nice.
Wonderful.
Mhm.
So, can you talk about how you were inspired to get into voiceover?
I mean, I think it's hard to know really because I wasn't super conscious of that in my early days. I think I was pretty susceptible to being surrounded by adults who were quite amused by the things I was doing and very, they were very supportive of me and they wanted me to do a good job, and I really liked the attention. Um, but I definitely liked the imagination aspect of it. And so I think it just sort of naturally flowed. I remember the first time I did kind of like a little girl voice when I was still a little girl was, like I said, when I was 11 in a school play in grade 6 or something. And people were like, whoa, how do you do that? And I said, I don't know. I did like a baby voice, and they were like, wow, that's cool. And I just sort of thought, oh yeah, I guess that's what it is. But I mean, I loved, like I said, I loved the Disney princesses at the time, and I loved all the kooky characters that I was, watching on television. I mean, and I was a He-Man kid and a She-Ra kid, and I watched, the originals, before they had a revamp of all of those. So I think I
Yeah.
just had an overactive imagination, and that's what kept inspiring the wheel to keep turning. And I was very lucky that I kept getting opportunities to practice and to learn. And I know you've interviewed some of my friends who are also here in Montreal, Danny Brochu and Bruce Dinsmore, and
Ah,
there are
yes.
Yes, indeed.
there's a whole little world of people here that have been my mentors and my teachers and my friends. I'm very lucky to call them friends, and
Wow.
they influenced me a lot, and I learned a lot from all of them. So I think it was just a self-perpetuating thing that that luckily was always sort of around, which not a lot of people get to say. I know it can be so hard for people coming out of theater school. Some people don't go to theater school and they just want to break in. So I'm very aware of how lucky I was to just sort of constantly be siphoned. I didn't
Mhm.
have much of a, I had a childhood that was geared towards performing. I will say that, I was always doing some kind of training for the next thing. So I possibly, I don't know. I didn't have a lot of time just meandering around the neighborhood
Right.
necessarily.
hmm
But yeah.
Definitely.
That's
Definitely.
awesome.
You had mentioned you had done like little kids' voices, but do you remember what your first professional voiceover role was?
Yeah. Well, yeah. So if we're talking about voice acting, I think you can find this one. It was a dubbing job, and I was 10 years old, and it was called Reach for the Sky, I think. And I played a Romanian gymnast, and her name was Karina Tanase, and
Oh wow.
it was pretty brutal. I don't know if they're going to show this movie anymore, but yeah, it sort of showed the rigors of being a gymnast in a kind of austere 80s version of Romania. Maybe it was even set in the 70s, I'm not sure. But I got to work with an amazing director who since passed away many, many years ago. His name was Jim Bauman, and he directed a lot of stuff in Montreal in the 80s, possibly in the 70s as well. And yeah, he hired me. He had these very intense eyes, and he was this little older man, and he was a real taskmaster, and there was a lot of very technical stuff in that movie. So I remember it well because I learned pretty much almost everything I know from Jim, from another incredible voice actor and director named Kathleen Fee, who was also in the movie, and from Tim Reed, another voice director who's also passed away. Kathleen is still with us, thankfully. But yeah, Jim was instrumental in teaching me everything I knew. And I remember at the time, the dubbing is so specific because you have to be able to read really quickly. You have to be able to read the text as it's going by on this rhythmic band, celluloid band. And it's all in this very strange cursive writing, which most people don't even know how to read now. So it's like this
Right.
very niche thing. And I was 10, and I was wildly intimidated by this intense man who was constantly just staring at me and, making sure I was on it. Probably I was a bit hyper too. And yeah, he was teaching me how to breathe into the microphone because, this character had gymnastics to do. And so I had to perform a lot of very, movement based things and understand how the breath of the character worked. And I remember having trouble panting really hard. So wouldn't do this with a kid today, but he had me run up and down like 3 flights of stairs several times. And he said, all right, when you get back, you run straight to the mic, and then we're going to press record and you're going to go. So I definitely remember that very vividly. And I did it because I was also training, in dancing. And so I was a very obedient little girl and I wanted to get it right. But it, it's funny. I found it on YouTube, I think a few years ago. I'm sure you can find it on YouTube unless they've removed it. But I remember my emotional state at that time. I hear my little voice, and I really remember that kid, and I remember that time very well. And I'm happy that it exists still. I'm happy that there's like some record of it because it was a really seminal moment for me. It really set me on the path of like wanting to get good at dubbing and wanting to understand what this weird beast was. You're watching this, but you're watching the picture and your eyes are doing this rapid eye movement kind of thing. And it's just
Right.
such a specific thing. And I don't think that they do it quite the same way in different places. They have a system in France to do it there, and they have a system in LA to do it there. There's like another kind of technology. Now it's all digital, but back then it was like handwritten on celluloid. And sometimes, the band would snap off the reel and we'd have to stop. Then, we'd have to put it back together. Sometimes the celluloid would melt from the projector being too hot, things like that. Weird kind of analog things that really we don't deal with now. So yeah, it's kind of fun. So that is my first really specific memory. I mean, I do remember that I enjoyed singing the jingles as well because we were a pile of kids just singing about hot dogs and cornflakes and Cheerios and things like that. That was really fun too.
Nice. Nice. So one of your most known roles, of course, is voicing the character Fern in Arthur. How did that come about?
I think it probably just came about where I was asked to audition. I remember vaguely being about possibly 16 or 17 years old. Maybe I want to say 16 or 17. I think that's when it kind of happened. I don't know if any of you guys can time check the date, but I wasn't in a lot of the first season as far as I know. I think they brought me in later. I wasn't part of the main crew. And I don't think Fern was meant to stick around for very long. I think she was just kind of there to
Like a
be
minor character.
like a minor character who was this archetypal kind of shy girl. I know they wanted to have a character who was, sort of more shy, and she'd had incidents where she'd wet the bed and things like that. Like Fern really went on a journey, but it was also around the same time where they were doing a lot of singing in the show. And so I remember, because I could sing, the part kept getting a little bigger. And then eventually they just kept calling me in, and they kept writing the part for me. And I was I mean, I don't have confirmation that that's exactly how it all went down. I'd have to
Right.
maybe ask Mark Brown, but I wouldn't do that. But I just felt lucky that they kept writing me in, because initially it wasn't supposed to be that big a part. And then, she evolved to writing her fernlets and then her poetry, and then her stories with Virgule Watteau, her kind of Hercule Poirot character. And so I really loved the way the character got to evolve, and the singing was really fun. We got to do an album. We actually did an
Yes,
Arthur
that's right.
Christmas album, which I really love. And I got to sing that kind of punky version of Silent Night, which ended up actually being kind of controversial, because I was sort of screaming some like they didn't, I mean, there was no profanity or anything, but people kind of were upset by how abrupt I was with some of the screaming of kind of a religious Christmas song. So we got in a little bit of hot water, but I stand by it. I loved it. And then we did the Backstreet Boys special.
Yes.
Oh, I love that
my
special.
gosh.
Yes.
Yeah, so that
my
was sort
gosh.
of a surprise at the time. And then when they revealed that that's what it was going to be, I felt very intimidated. And because everything was always happening, in Montreal, and then also in the States, I think in Boston and in various places in the States, we never met the Backstreet Boys, but I recorded my tracks first, and then the Backstreet Boys got the track. And I remember somebody giving me feedback and saying, oh, they listened to your bed and they thought you were really good. And I thought, oh, cool. The Backstreet Boys think I'm good at singing. Yay. So that was
Oh, that's special.
that was an
That's
interesting
wonderful.
moment. Yeah, like little moments like that always stand out. And
Mhm.
I just feel so happy that I get to we did the podcast version.
Yeah, the Arthur
Yes.
podcast.
Yeah,
Other
that's right.
podcasts.
That's right. And that was really nice to be able to revisit, because it was quite bittersweet when it ended.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yes.
it was a really good run, though. Not a lot of people can say that they get to do something for about 25 years.
Yeah, I mean, I think the only like really long running show that's still on is like Sesame Street or something like
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess The Simpsons. There's
Yeah,
that, but
Simpsons, yeah.
that's a
Mhm.
whole other niche spectrum of popularity and stuff. But yeah, I'm very, very, very happy to be involved with the Arthur world, and I'm always happy to hear from them. The crew is so nice. All the people involved are just deeply kind, and I'm happy, because they really embody the values of the show. They've never deviated from anything. They're really about inclusion and diversity and
Mhm.
kindness and community.
Yes.
So
Definitely.
I feel very
Yes.
happy about that.
For
Yeah.
sure.
Yes, for sure.
So when you started working on Arthur, did you have any idea that it would become one of the most popular kids shows on television?
No way. No, we were happy for the work. We were always kind of baffled that it kept going. And I mean, and again, because I was sort of a peripheral character, I wasn't like a Danny Brochu Buster, I wasn't, and sometimes we wouldn't know the Arthur necessarily because he would be in Toronto as the actors would age out of the character. There was sort of we wouldn't always see each other. I know Danny talked about how we would all get together and do rehearsals together and we would all record in the same room. And then,
Right.
eventually with technology changing, that changed and they started doing things more remotely. But no, it just sort of became this gift that kept on giving. And I just kind of rolled with it. I was always just like, okay, cool, and I would get fan mail once in a while and think, whoa, that's
Wow.
really
Aw.
intense. I'd get
That's
handwritten
wonderful.
letters and yeah, it was special. But I had no idea. At the time, it just sort of it was another job and I was very grateful to have the job, but I was just very professional and wanted to do a good job. So
Nice.
Yeah.
So now you mentioned the Backstreet Boys special, but do you have any like favorite Arthur episodes?
Ooh. You know what? I don't have any specific ones. I'm sorry to say that I really I feel like this feels like a cop out, but like I would say that the Backstreet Boys episode is one of my favorites, obviously, because it's mine.
Yeah.
I remember really
Backstreet Boys,
loving, Backstreet Boys, but I remember loving the one where Fern wet the bed. I really love all of the ones where she writes her mystery stories and does
Oh
these kind
yeah.
of Frankenstein story
Mhm.
hybrids.
Mhm.
But I love the ones that have become any kind of iconic episode for anybody else.
I mean the musical one.
The musical one was
That was
amazing.
great.
Mr. Ratburn getting married is amazing.
Oh yeah, yeah.
There's
Yeah.
too many to name, and no, I'm sorry, I'm going to be a disappointment on this one. I don't have one
That's okay.
specific one. I love them
No
all.
worries.
That's
I
okay. Yeah,
don't.
they're all
It's
good.
okay. Too many,
There are
too
lots
many
of
to choose from.
So
good
many to
Yeah.
choose
episodes.
from,
So
Yeah.
I
yeah.
mean there are only hundreds.
Yeah,
Only
all,
hundreds.
only hundreds.
That's it.
Like it's very tough to like how many episodes are there, whole show, and you have to pick only one episode. That's very hard.
Yeah.
No, you don't even have to pick one. It's
I'm
Yeah,
really
even
bad
just
at that. When people
even
ask me what my favorite anything is, I'm like, only one favorite? I can't. Can I
yeah,
give you top five
Yeah.
or three or 12?
yeah,
Like,
top five.
Exactly.
Top five would do, not just
I
one.
can't. I can't do it.
Exactly.
So all of
No.
them.
Yeah. Awesome. So
Thanks.
okay, so this is very interesting. Besides your own, do you have a favorite Arthur character?
I love
Is it
I
gonna be the
love
same answer,
I
isn't
love
it?
Buster. I love Binky.
Oh, of
I
course,
love
yes.
Francine. Yeah, I'll go with Buster, Binky, and Francine. Obviously, I love Arthur. Um, Everyone always makes me laugh a ton. I love Muffy cheese. This is a hard question, you guys. If I had to pick one, I think I would pick maybe even Binky because he's just
Oh,
like,
Binky's great.
Yeah.
tough and
Yeah.
misunderstood, and he just wants to do the right thing, and he's
Yeah.
he's very well-meaning. No, but then then you got Buster. I don't know, guys. Too
Yeah.
hard. Why make me decide? All of them. Francine's great. Why? No, I can't do this. I refuse to pick. Don't make me pick. I do love them all. I really do think that it's an amazing cast of tight-knit friends. And I'm a big ensemble person. I really love like the whole group of something.
Yeah. And
know?
yeah, and Buster's great. And not a lot of people talk about it nowadays, but the spin-off show that he got, Postcards from Buster.
Yes.
Oh, that was a
It's
great show.
Yes.
Yeah. I was very happy
Great
to
show.
be involved in some of those episodes as well. Yeah. I
Yeah.
thought that was
Nice.
a really
Awesome.
cool. Yeah, it was a cool spin-off and a cool kind of hybridization and talking to
Mhm.
real kids.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
thought that was a really great initiative.
Yeah, and it's great, Buster can have his, style what he wants to do, and
Yeah,
for his show, so it's really wonderful to do that,
exactly.
Buster.
Yeah.
Maybe, I don't know why. It'd be kind of cool if they could do that for Binky and all those characters.
Wouldn't that be nice? Yeah, we can
Yeah.
all get our own little season. Well, I
Yeah.
don't know.
Yeah.
Put it out there. Put it out there, Arthurverse.
Yeah.
Come on. Start
Yeah.
writing to WGBH and get it going again.
Yeah.
Come on,
Yeah.
come on. Let's do it.
Let's do it. It won't look bad on my end at all that I'm asking for more. No. It won't look opportunistic in any way.
So now another voiceover role that you're most known for is voicing the lead character Sagwa in Sagwa the Chinese Siamese Cat. What was it like kind of getting your own lead character in the show?
You know what? It was amazing. It was amazing. I met Amy Tan and it was
Oh yeah.
amazing. And but I was scared, I think. I was quite young still. I was like about 21, 22. And it was a lot of pressure. I mean, we obviously had a lot of fun. I loved everybody that I worked with. I loved working with the director Terrence Scammell, and I loved my co-stars. But I did feel nervous because it did feel like big stakes a lot of the time. It did feel like a lot of eyes were on that project. So I remember just really wanting to be diligent and good with the voice. It was quite a high voice at the time. And so a lot of the job is like making sure you're in the right zone and checking, especially because we had some Mandarin to speak. And so I wanted to make sure that I had the accent right. But again, very fun. Definitely learned a lot. It was, kind of a high stakes thing, like I said, and I had never really had anything like that. But again, it was pre-internet, so we knew we had a hit. And I believe it won a couple of might have been nominated for an Emmy or two. Same with Arthur. I received some Emmy certificates and I was sort of blown away by that. Even though we're just part of sort of like a more technical background team, it's still really special to be called out and rewarded for something like that. Being part of that team was really cool. Also, like, it was a different time, and sensitivity wise, like, obviously everybody was very careful, and we did have a lot of Asian Canadian actors who were involved out of Vancouver, and a handful here in Montreal. But I think, quite frankly, if someone had approached me now, like, no one would approach me now for that kind of role, and I wouldn't want them to. I really kind of think would have been much better to find like a whole cast of Asian actors to be able to play those parts. And again,
right,
it was the time. We have a lot more inclusivity and sensitivity now. And I'm not saying I regret it, and I'm certainly very thankful. But I wonder if they ever did a reboot of that, like what that would be now. I would like to see that now. I would like to watch that now.
That'd be awesome.
And have just more diversity but again,
I feel like it'll be worked for
I think it would
generation.
I think it might work because since we're in the world of reboots, I do see a lot of reboots of shows that are based on books.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. There's just like a whole new crop of voice actors coming up, and so I think it's just it's ripe for rebooting. I don't know. I mean, maybe Amy Tan is working on something else, but I do have a very soft spot for Sagwa, and I had a stuffed animal, and there was merchandise, and that had never happened.
That's crazy.
Before. Yeah, it was really special. And again, like I would never overlook that as I wouldn't be like cavalier about it, but it set me on more and more of a path into this world. And so I'm very conscious of having gotten that role and the opportunities it afforded me. I loved it.
That's wonderful.
It was a good show. And you mentioned Sagwa merchandise. Sagwa merchandise I've seen is pretty hard to come by now.
Is it?
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
You
Because
would
like if
maybe
you
know better than I would. Tell me all about it.
because like if you go on eBay and search up like say Sagwa plush, like
Oh,
to get one new, it would probably cost like $200.
oh, poop. I
What?
gave mine away.
Oh,
Oh,
I know. I had it in the box and everything.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah. Maybe Sagwa videos wouldn't be as tricky to come by, but definitely like
yeah.
no.
Like for plushes and all that. It's
plushes.
just
Yeah, well,
Plushes.
I think they did a limited edition on everything anyway. Like it wasn't,
Mm.
they were just
Mm.
sort of testing out the waters at that time. I remember, I think they wanted to talk to me about doing a voiced doll, with like a pulley kind of thing. And
Okay, yeah.
it was very
Ah.
expensive. Like they wanted to do it, but the negotiations were really nuts, and like there was a lot of back and forth about it. And then they were like, well, we'll just find a sound alike. And it became kind of very money oriented, I remember, and I didn't really want to be involved in that. And I think it all kind of fizzled out. So I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm speaking out of school, but I remember it being a little odd. And they said they would do it, and then they didn't want to do it anymore. I thought, oh well, I want to do it, but it never happened. But yeah, like as far as I knew, it was limited edition on the merch and stuff like that. So sheesh, maybe I should look around. I wonder if I've still got my my plushie. No idea.
Mm.
Well, I hope whoever has it can sell it on eBay and get a good little profit margin
Or-
off of it.
Yeah.
yeah.
Maybe for a slightly more reasonable price, but
Yeah.
Hey,
hopeful.
Yeah.
send a pic of it if you find one. Send me a picture.
Definitely, yeah.
Definitely.
Because I think there were plushes made of Sagwa's siblings too.
Yeah. There were all of us. I
Mhm.
don't know if they made a Fufu one. He was my favorite character.
Oh, I
my
love
siblings.
Fufu.
Yeah. He
Fufu's
was
great.
voiced. I don't know if you ever had a chance to speak to the actor Rick Jones, but he's one of our. I would say that Rick Jones is probably our Canada's version of Mel Blanc. He's a
Okay.
he's a genius. He's the only actor I've ever met who could have a double conversation in his own mouth. Like he could do kind of like a high pitched. I can't even do it. I can't emulate it. I don't even know how to produce a kind of sound that would make that make sense. But it was like a Donald Ducky kind of like in the back, and you could hear it kind of going, and then he could speak out of the other part of his mouth and have like a back and forth conversation with himself.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
crazy.
My gosh.
Yeah, if you can find him, I think he's a bit of a recluse and he lives his life, but he's an incredible actor and an amazing teacher and colleague and a good friend. And yeah, he has voiced thousands of Canadian cartoon characters over the years. Terrence Scammell too. They're wonderful. They would often work together. Anyway,
Nice.
so yeah, he played Fufu, and we laughed a lot. I remember laughing a lot in the studio and being kind of younger, being kind of intimidated by everyone, sort of thinking, oh gosh, I hope I don't blow this take, because they would constantly be making me laugh. So yeah,
My
a lot of
gosh.
fun. A lot of fun.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Definitely.
I can ask you guys a question.
Sure, if you
Sure.
want to, go
what
ahead.
made you want to start this podcast? Like, I want to know, we had a little bit of back and forth online, but like, I really love that you guys are doing this, and I can see, you have a collection of stuff in the background there, Chris,
Mhm. Chris
and
does.
yeah, like what are all your backgrounds and what made you want to do this?
So
Well, so when I messaged you about the another good friend of ours who wants to get you on his podcast, the DJ Bob show, I was actually
Yes.
a co-host on that podcast like
Okay.
a couple years ago. So I had kind of already had experience with doing podcasts getting into this one, but
Okay.
yeah. But this one I think I do a little bit more than what I did for the DJ Bob show.
Okay.
yeah.
Because I also edit and run the social medias and stuff.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah.
But I mean, I guess why cartoons, you guys? Like, why just things from your own childhoods that made you
Yeah,
really
pretty-
happy?
Yeah,
Yes.
pretty much.
Pretty much,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yes.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
because
do you study this in school, or are you out of school? Like, what do you like? Do you want to be in this industry? I mean, you kind of are in the industry already doing this podcast. You're always gathering people, but like, I don't know. I love when people get in touch, and I'm always curious about them. So
Yeah.
tell me more.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I didn't start out with the podcast originally. I came in a couple months after it started. I started with the podcast about a year ago. It's wonderful, it really is. Chris and Jakey have brought me on,
Mhm.
and it's just been wonderful ever since.
Great.
yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and how I'm the one, the host of this. So, so basically, how the podcast all started, really, of course, long story short, is I wanted to make a podcast, just wanted to like talk about, of course, nostalgia. That's why it's called Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show, right?
Right.
But then, I just want to talk about, how much I grew up and all that, become, big part of my life, and we've been talking a lot of aspects of guests, which is really wonderful for that,
Mhm.
for this podcast. So it's really wonderful that we can do stuff like this. So
I'm
Mhm.
happy. I'm happy that people want to talk, because that's the nicest part about the whole voice work industry. I think it's small and it's weird and it's niche. And I mean, in the States, it's way bigger, but
yeah.
everyone is interested in the job. I don't think anybody can do this job just kind of doing it. I mean, maybe you can get away with it, but like for me, you have to have the love for it. You constantly have to have that
Mhm.
excitement and the imagination machine going, and you got to want to do it, because
Yeah,
the
and
voice
that's
doesn't
kind of what
lie.
happened to me
Of
when
course, yeah,
when I think about doing it, so
definitely.
Cool. Sorry to put you guys on the spot. I just
No worries.
No, that's
worries. No,
No, this is actually a nice change of pace,
There you
actually.
go.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
yeah.
Thank you
is.
for that.
I don't like all
Thank you,
this
Ben.
attention. I like being behind the scenes.
Yeah,
There you go.
This
yeah. What episode is actually 101? I think it's
Yeah.
101.
taping
Yeah.
wise, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Taping wise,
Is
yeah.
this one's 101?
101.
Mm.
Yes.
Awesome. That's good. I like that
101.
number.
Yes.
Oh, one.
Yes.
101.
Good. Nice and
101.
even. It's good.
Yes.
You've got a good
yes.
shape. Got a good shape.
Yes.
Yep.
Wonderful.
Yep. So, how do I word this? I know the hard thing is wording this particular question. I know fans are gonna wanted us to do this,
Okay.
but wording it. But can we hear a bit of Fern and Sagwa's voices
Ooh.
separately,
Well,
of course?
sure.
Okay, let's see. Fern is yeah, I would say this is sort of more Fern zone, very quiet and has a bit of excitement when she talks about her writing and her mysteries. Yeah, I would say this is pretty much Fern. Would you guys say this is pretty much Fern?
I
Yeah.
think so.
Yeah, this sounds
Yeah.
about Fern.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, I really miss my friends and I really love my books and I'm still writing poetry.
And I don't know if I can get to the Sagwa place, but
Gosh, I know she was probably somewhere up around here because she was young, right? She was God, I haven't listened to any of the clips. If you guys had a clip, then maybe I could follow it. But I think this is sort of where Sagwa lived. Now I'm worried that you're going to ask me to do some of my other characters that were even higher than
No.
this.
No.
Like you said,
No.
Whimsy's house
No.
before, and I don't know if I can even get to that level.
No.
I'm an old lady now.
We'll bring up Whimsy's house, but we're not
Yeah.
going to ask you to do
Yeah,
the voice.
yeah.
That's kind of concerned. I was trying to think, like, can she still do
Lulu-
Sagwa's a thing?
I don't know. Is that
Like-
Sagwa? I mean, Sagwa didn't really have a catchphrase, but she was just constantly getting into trouble. I remember that.
Yeah, yeah.
But I mean,
Mhm.
she was a small cat, and
my brother and sister character cats were even cuter and smaller voices. And I don't think either of them are actually doing any voice work anymore. One of them I know for sure is not, and most of the other people on that show are still doing voice work. But I think that
because some of the other Arthur people worked on that too.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Again, like, as Danny Brochu said in a previous episode, we're a very small community here. Thankfully, it's getting bigger though, now that, we're all getting older and there are newer generations of people and I get to teach now and do more directing. But yeah, Sagwa's a
that's a leap, guys. Thanks a lot. I didn't warm up this morning, so
tell the fans I'm sorry. I hope it's okay.
We're sorry. We tried our best.
Thanks, guys.
We tried our best.
If you prepared me in advance, maybe I would have been able to. But I think it's okay. They'll probably have a lot to say about it, but I don't know.
They might. I don't know.
Well, tell them I apologize if they're mad.
I doubt they'll be mad.
I can come back and do a phone call and tell me what you want me to say, and I'll practice it in the proper
Sagwa voice.
So over the years, I know you did kind of touch base a little bit earlier, but over the years, Arthur and Sagwa have won and were nominated for numerous awards. How does it feel to you that those shows to be so successful?
It feels great. I mean, it's like I said, it's a strange job. I live in a faraway kind of cold, weird little town, and like I said, we're mostly a French-speaking province, and I get to work in my mother tongue, which is English. And I'm a bilingual person, and it's a lucky life that I have. And so I think it's just really special that we have this little enclave of English voice actors here that can kind of span Canada and the States, and we can be known and recognized for this work. But I like I said earlier, like I made a joke about it, but I'm not really about spotlight. I'm not very good at social media. This is not why I do this work. Like I'm super happy to do work and to get called to do work, but I don't know. It's intimidating. And it's great. These shows deserve this kind of recognition. The teams are incredible. The art is gorgeous. The stories are vital and important. And, I'm very, very grateful that I was given the opportunity to work on these shows. And yeah, I don't know a lot of people in my friend circle that, that can say like, yeah, I've got some Emmys in my closet, some Emmy certificates. It's a really cool thing. So, just grateful. And it was not what I expected as a child. And but it's not the goal either. I just want to make good work that people are happy with, that can affect people like you guys and make you happy and give people inspiration to, live their best lives, or also maybe want to get into voice work or do something adjacent to the voice work industry, or like I really think this is such a strange realm to be able to make a living in. So it feels great. It feels great, but it's kind of baffling too. I'm kind of like, wow, who knew?
Yeah.
Definitely. And with Arthur and Sagwa, they taught a lot of different things too. I mean, Sagwa of course taught a bit about China, and Arthur dealt with some pretty serious topics too.
Yeah Bullying, all kinds of stuff.
Or the episode where Mrs. McGrady had cancer,
right?
So some very serious things that not a lot of cartoons, or really kids shows in general, would deal with.
No, that's
shows,
it.
Really.
And I think that's the nice thing. Like these kinds of shows, I think they had such longevity because, not that all cartoons are this way. I'm not saying this, but some cartoons can be pretty two-dimensional in terms of their messaging. And, some are just they're very limited in their scope, but these shows didn't condescend to children. Children are deeply important members of society, and I think often they're overlooked, and so I like a lot of people who grew up with Arthur. Yeah, I have a lot of people that have come up to me over the years and said to me, yeah, I learned so much from that show, and it was like my companion. These guys were my friends too, and I'm glad people felt that way, and I'm glad it really impacted people positively, because we're living in a pretty intense time in the world as it shifts and morphs. So yeah, it's great that we have this little nugget of time, 25 years worth of shows.
Yeah.
For Arthur, at least. I was always sad that Sagwa didn't get to continue into more seasons, but yeah, it's a real privilege, I'm just a weirdo doing voices in the dark. I'm just like, I didn't know it would have this kind of scope and impact on people.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. So we had brought this up earlier. You also worked on a puppet show called Whimsy's House, providing the role of Lulu. Now, even though it was still voiceover, what was it like working on the show with a different style than most of the work you've done?
That was a really wacky show to work on. It was all puppets, and it was very, very special working on that show. Because it was a Quebecois show and originally in French. So it felt very homemade and homegrown, Montreal specific. Again, worked with a lot of the same people who I worked with on Arthur. At that time, there weren't a lot of people who knew how to do dubbing, and it was a dubbed show from French into English. I remember feeling again, a little I don't want to make it sound bad, but it was overwhelming. It was a lot of work. And Lulu was like way up here. I can't even really do it. But I was 16 at the time, so my voice was very fresh and very flexible. But yeah, it was a lot of like wide-eyed, like ha 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 ha, a lot of like dopey kind of characterization. Again, we would laugh a lot, and there was always a song to do in every episode. So I learned a lot from my colleagues, because we would often have to work in the same space together. And at the time, the studio was very small. So it was pre-COVID, it was pre-everything. So, sometimes we would be the director and 3 or 4 actors plus the engineer. We were all in the same room with no divider between us. So I had to learn how to be very quiet, and I had to learn how to be very technically proficient and very quick, because we had a lot to get through in those sessions. But it was wonderful, because we felt like we were doing kind of Henson-esque sort of puppet show, which was really special as well. That's always been a dream, to work for the Jim Henson Company or something like that. So yeah, getting to do Whimsy's House was the closest that I've gotten, and it was really fun. It was really, really fun. We laughed a lot. Those characters were very again, it was like an educational show, but it had more of a hyperactive kind of tone to it. So you guys watched that show?
A little bit, I think.
A little bit.
Might have been a little before my time.
Yeah.
It was also for much younger kids, right? Like it was.
Yeah, and I was born in 2004, so I wasn't grew up watching that show. Because
I was 2000. It might have been on for maybe like a couple more years, but I don't think it was on for that much longer.
I was also 2000, so might have been on a little bit.
Yeah, see, it was done in the 90s, and again, like it's interesting to know you guys are in the States. There wasn't transparency like there is now, or there wasn't like a searchable quality. Like we didn't have the internet. We couldn't just like stream it or download it or, steal it. Like we would often do shows. And I mean, there are still hundreds of shows of mine that I've been on that I've never seen, because I don't know where they aired. We never knew where they would go. And so it's very easy to lose track of many, many, many of these shows. Like I still, there are some I can't even tell you. I'm ashamed to say, like, and it's the fans who have been collecting the data and amassing the, connecting all the dots and saying like, oh, you did this. And sometimes I'm like, oh yeah, I did that. Did you see that? Because I I don't know where they ended up. I remember once I went to Singapore and I turned on the television and there was a show that I had done a voice on and I had never seen it because it was made to be shipped to, you know, Asian countries and never to be seen in Canada. So I was like totally taken aback that there. I don't remember what the show was. Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
that's where it went, you know. So
Oh, that's where it is.
exactly. And so it's interesting to hear from you guys, like, what did you watch? What did you have access to? Because things would have been in syndication, things would have come at different times. And now there's all sorts of streamer channels. So I don't know. Maybe
so many streaming
everything is
channels now.
Yeah.
So now, and people can say whatever they want about this show, but but we all, I'm sure, grew up with it. But you also voiced various characters on the show Caillou. Can you talk a bit about that?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I voiced the babysitter on the Caillou cartoon. And then there was another iteration of the show where they spliced it together with puppet work.
Yeah, that's right.
So
Yeah.
I played a little squirrel.
which is DeeDee.
Yes.
DeeDee,
DeeDee.
yes, that's right. And she was a sort of similar, like Lulu, like very hyperactive, very squirrel.
Which is kind of funny. Because previously we actually previously interviewed Tim Gosley, who only did the puppeteering for DeeDee.
Oh, fantastic! Oh, well, it was a real joy to work on that part of the show. Obviously, it was a joy to work on Caillou as well, but you know, it was also pretty tragic here in Montreal because we did lose the original voice actress.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah.
And she was a good friend and kind of little sister to many of us, myself included.
So
that was quite traumatizing. You know, it was a terrible time, and so that show has always been a little bit tainted, you know, with that memory. But again, like, it lived on and there were new actors doing Caillou, and that was always very nice. And I'm glad that we can still have Jacqueline's voice for everybody to hear. I know that it's a bit of a controversial show in that people find Caillou kind of annoying as a character. So
especially you compare, you know, the first season and then to the last season. So Caillou.
Yeah.
Right. Right. But you know, I played the babysitter, so mostly I was just there to be like a guiding figure, and I was always happy to do that. I played a lot of babysitters over the years.
Yeah.
But I loved playing DeeDee the squirrel. I found that very amusing, and I got to work with one actor in particular, Pierre Cole, or Pierre Paquette. He went by two names for a long time here in Quebec because he works in French and English. So yeah, working with him was a joy. And my imagination is always sparked when the characters are so adorable too, you know, like it's nice to play the babysitter and be like the kind of voice of reason, but my jam is more like, give me the cute fluffy thing. I want to voice that. I want to voice cute characters. And I'm lucky I've been able to voice,
you know, like DeeDee for example.
DeeDee. I played a very adorable little zebra hybrid elephant in a cartoon called Zafari a few years ago, which was also really a lot of fun. And
Anyway. And you're also one of the
the singers
Kayettes?
in those
Kayette singers. That's
which we talked to Danny Brochu about too, because he was another one of them.
That's right. Yeah. No, we got to do a lot of singing back in those days. It was it was fun. I mean, it was really special to be able to use all the things I loved doing, singing and acting and being silly. It was a real joy to get to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like I said, you know, people can say what they want about Caillou, but it is nostalgic, and they did bring it back for a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's on Cartoonito.
Yeah.
Cartoonito. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a kids show, and sometimes kids are annoying, and that's sort of the point, you know. You gotta. It's a kids show.
You know, there's gonna be some characters gonna be like that. So
that's right.
Yeah.
So people, what are you thinking?
But it was on for a long time too. In fact, I think it had only.
Yes.
I think they just like 3 years ago finally like pulled the plug on it for
I
PBS.
think so.
Yeah, because of parents thinking about Caillou.
I think it's
blah,
also
blah,
I
blah.
think PBS just might have lost the rights to it.
Oh,
I
it
think
could be
so.
that.
Or-
It
Most-
definitely
probably-
could be
mostly, yeah.
right.
Yeah, and probably because
Mostly.
Caillou's been airing for probably a long time. That just
Yeah, they probably
it's
wanted to
time
make
do
way
that.
for newer
For new shows.
Yeah, there's new,
Yeah.
and I mean,
which
I love
happens.
that's it. That's important too.
Yeah.
You know, it's
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
there are other stories that need to be told, and there are other perspectives that need to be out there. So
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Mhm.
with Arthur, I know they've mentioned Arthur's definitely going to be still airing for a long time.
yeah, yeah,
which is
and with
amazing.
the podcast is great, and you know,
Yeah.
there's still, they're still present. They're still
Yeah, there's still Arthur out there, just not in the
Just
same
not-
way that it was for many years.
exactly.
Yeah.
But we
Yeah.
evolve, you know, and that's the
Yeah.
beauty
Mhm.
of the world now, and technology now, and internet now, and it's amazing. I'm very grateful to get to think about this time because you know, it's quite a long time ago for me now, and I feel like a big grown up, and it's special to be able to try to go through the file facts of my memories, which is a little dusty.
Yeah.
Very nice to be able to talk about that time in my life. It was a real learning time, and I grew a lot.
Yeah,
Mhm. Yeah.
definitely.
So some other anime series you worked on were, what's with Andy and the Vampire. What was it like, to do those shows?
Those were fun too. You know, I didn't have a lot of episodes on either of those. I mean, what's with Andy, for sure there was more. Playing Terry was really fun. And yeah, Mona the Vampire, mostly it was like little tiny parts, and then Belinda, again, the babysitter. So, you know, it was all
Dude,
it was
wow,
all
they had
around
lots of
that same
babysitters
time.
for
A lot of
the show.
babysitters. I had that like nice babysitter voice, and I did do a lot of babysitting, so I guess art was imitating life. Again, very, very fun. I felt very lucky. And it was always nice to get to see how far they went. You know, people really loved
Mhm.
What's with Andy.
Yeah.
That was for a company, Cine Group, that doesn't really exist anymore, that show. There were a lot of changes in the Montreal voice scene in the 2000s as well. So like there was a lot of shifting and morphing, and then a lot of the work dried up because there was some scandals that happened here. So it was an interesting time. Like that was in the before time, you know, when there was a ton of work happening, and I was working almost every day after school. I was, you know, high school, university, and I was just going to jobs, and yeah, it was part of a whole other life. But yeah, lots of fun. I mean, a lot of the things I remember are that we laughed a lot, you know, we would really just have a good time being goofy. And that was really fun
Yeah.
to get to do.
Definitely.
Mhm.
So in addition to voicing for animated series, you've also voiced some characters in some various video games,
Mhm.
including some for the Assassin's Creed series.
Yes.
Oh wow.
What's it like getting to work in video games for voices?
Pretty cool, I have to say. I'm, you know, not a huge gamer myself, but
Me neither. I used to be.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I'm not.
Me too,
I'm
but
not.
I'm not.
Nah.
I mean, that's the way, it's sort of the new thing. And because Montreal has the Ubisoft kind of headquarters here, that was also something that was happening at the time. You know, I did start working at Ubisoft quite a long time ago when they were a fledgling company. I found a pay stub a couple years ago from 1999. So I evolved with them, and again, like that's fun work too, you know, because I've gotten to do little kids' voices, I've gotten to learn certain languages, I've gotten to do very specific kind of research for parts. I've gotten to do lots of action kind of characters that I never would necessarily do. In animation, I was always doing more like young fairies and chipmunks and
yeah.
cute things. And then
Mhm.
in these games, I got to actually be, you know, a woman, a grown woman, or a fighter, or, you know, speak Greek, speak ancient Greek. So yeah, it's been very special to get to work for the Ubisoft franchises.
Oh yes, they make some really good games.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
They make a lot of good
there's a
games.
reason that they're still doing a ton of stuff, you know.
Oh
People
yeah.
really love these games, and I realize that more and more the more I do. I'm very lucky too, because now I get to do voice directing for Ubisoft on various games, which is really fun. I get to sort of put all my knowledge and nerding out into practice for other people. I coach people through sessions, and it's always very exciting to get to help people and listen to people and get inspired by what they're doing on these games too. So yeah, overall it's just been a wonderful experience to get to work with them.
Yeah, I was just speaking of vocal coaching. I was gonna ask, like, how did that kind of come into play?
That started, I think it was just the virtue of the fact that I was known in Montreal as someone who had a lot of experience, and I like sharing my knowledge. And you know, people started asking me for help with their auditions and for help with their demos. And yeah, like I mean, I started the website during the pandemic just because I was getting more and more emails and curiosity about it. So I started my website to just sort of offer a space for coaching options. But again, like that's just me being a kind of nerd and knowing a lot about this industry and about how to manipulate the voice and what sounds good and how to kind of find the essential part of someone's voice and how to make characters out of their voice. And I don't know, I like engaging with people. I like community, and I like being a teacher. You know, I used to teach dance, and I don't know. I think it's just nice to be able to share what I've learned in 35 plus years of being in this industry. And I want people to, you know, understand what it is, that it's not a given. There's no guarantee that you'll get a job, but if you love it and you're passionate about it, you know, I can help get you there in terms of what sounds good. And yeah,
Right.
it's just been very nice to be able to get to do that as well.
Yeah.
Which goes
Yeah.
hand in hand with the voice directing as well. Like
Mhm.
I was very lucky to work with so many incredible voice directors, and it's such a specific kind of direction. I mean, I've worked with film and television directors too, and they're wonderful too, and that's a whole other genre and a whole other realm. And I always try to observe, you know, what works and what doesn't work. But you know, I did learn in a time when people were maybe less sensitive to the needs of younger people. Like I said, you know, I loved working when I was a kid, but they worked us hard as kids. And now I feel lucky that I can kind of give better resources to people and teach in a way that maybe would have been nice to have access to when I was little and didn't always have that. So like, I kind of want to be like the mama bear of voice directing and voice acting. My little cat just jumped up on my chair, so she's here with us now.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, what's her name?
Her name's May, and her brother's in the other room, but he's a scaredy cat, so he won't come in.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's kind of funny. They have a cat when you literally voice a cat.
Yeah.
Sagwa.
I love
Kinda
cats.
ironic.
Yeah, no, they've always been part of my life, kitty cats. So I wonder if
Yes,
we can camera down.
both with voiceover and in real life.
Aw.
Little May.
Oh.
Yeah.
Hi. I
Coffee mug.
know.
May, want to say hi? Oh, there she is. She's like, what are you doing, mommy? What are you doing?
What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Wait, why are you talking to all these people right now?
Who are these
Yeah.
weirdos you're talking to?
She's a very shy girl. She's like, don't put me on the TV. Don't put me on the internet, Mom. I don't wanna.
Oh my gosh.
Oh man. Oh man.
So you probably know we did mention the Sagwa plush earlier.
Yes.
But do you have any memorabilia or anything from the projects that you've worked on that you want to show or just talk about?
I mean, to be quite honest, there hasn't been a lot of merchandise that has been given out. I do have I've received some Arthur sweatshirts over the years. I don't have
That's
any of
cool.
that handy, but
It's fine.
Nice.
yeah, it wasn't about the merch. Like we
Right.
never,
No.
sometimes we would see it, but full disclosure, I went to FAO Schwartz in New York City and bought that Sagwa plushie myself.
Oh,
Wow.
Yeah. Like it wasn't
Yeah.
that wasn't the priority at the time.
Right. I mean, it's
Arthur
not like
was
with
so
live action.
generous with us, but
It's not like with live action shows, because sometimes you'll see interviews with people who do like on-screen acting, and they'll say, "Oh, I got to take this from set," or "I got to keep this."
yeah. And I mean, I've
I
been
had
given
this
merch
problem.
from other projects and stuff, but that's definitely not been the focus. I would say now though,
No.
like those little pop Funko dolls, like if ever they
Yeah.
Yes.
a
Uh-huh.
reissue of a Sagwa or Arthur characters, I'd be all over that. Just
Oh
They
yeah.
should do that with more of
Yes,
the
they
Arthur
should do that.
characters.
They should do that.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they haven't already.
talk to
Yeah.
Mark Brown, ask Mark Brown.
Mark.
We
Mark,
might
why
have
aren't there
to.
pop Funkos? Okay, now Meg's
Right.
like, ugh, you're too
What are we gonna
loud.
do?
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, no, I don't have a lot of the merch, like because there wasn't a lot of the merch.
No,
And
there
again, we're
wasn't.
talking 20 years ago, so I didn't want to hoard a lot of stuff. I try
No.
not to keep too much stuff over the years. But
Right.
the last little piece of merch I got was for the Safari cartoon that we did. But I actually don't know if that ever aired. I think it may have aired in various other countries, but it was supposed to air in the States. And then I think they just sort of put it up on YouTube. I think it aired in the UK.
Okay.
Huh.
That was a fun
Hmm.
cartoon that we did kind of in the last 5 years. But yeah, I don't have a lot of merch, guys. Geez, I'm like pretty boring.
No,
No, it's okay.
No.
It's okay.
Oh.
As you said, there was very limited Sagwa merch anyway.
Yeah.
So
Right,
Yeah.
yeah. So overall, what are some things you'd say you enjoy most about, being a voice actress?
I love getting to laugh, getting to be a big goofball. I love getting to spark up my imagination and put myself into, a totally different character's kind of voice and life and shoes. I love sharing. I love the sense of community that I get from it. And I think that, the voice is such a specific tool. Obviously, it's kind of a silly thing to say, but our voice comes from inside our body. Like it's a very intimate thing,
Mhm.
And so the fact that people respond so much to cartoon and voice work, that's not nothing. That's something universal, that's something that we all kind of tap into. So it's very nice to be able to use mine and have people enjoy it and have it be meaningful for so many people over so many years. See, again, I don't have one favorite thing. I have a multitude of favorite things.
Right, and that's fine.
yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah, it's a
there.
connection. I love the connection of it all.
yes,
Absolutely.
definitely.
Yes.
Definitely.
Yep. So we've talked a lot about your work in the past. Can you
Mm.
share any projects you're currently working on?
Well, like I said, I'm doing a lot of voice direction for Ubisoft. Unfortunately, it's all under non-disclosure agreements. So
Yeah, right.
I'm
Yeah.
working on various projects and various dubbing projects under the Netflix banner a lot of the time. But again, I'm not really allowed to talk about it. But I am working on a lot of dubbing. There's been a lot more dubbing work that has come from the pandemic time because people were trapped at home, watching content.
Right.
But yeah, like I would say that it's sort of 50-50 now, my own voice work where I do the acting portion and then where I get to do the directing. And that has been really special to be able to sit in the director's chair and guide younger people who have less experience. And again, like I'm really lucky because I was trained in a time where there was tons of work, and now actors coming up in this world with the pandemic, you can't just sit in the studio and watch other actors do their thing. It's very stringent. There are a lot of rules. So I like to try to give as much information as possible in a short amount of time. And I try to be really efficient with the way that I give out that information. And
Hmm.
it's a privilege, it's a privilege to get to be sitting and watching a whole new generation of actors. And now there are a lot more people who know how to dub, and it's nice to be able to share my weird little niche talent with people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can't really talk about anything. I mean, there were more recent animated things that I did, like a cartoon called Toon Marty. I think that's on YouTube as well. You can find it. And Zafar, like I said. Yeah, there hasn't been a lot of animation happening in Montreal, but I'm sure things will come down the pipeline. In the meantime, I'm just busy doing, like I said, dubbing and voice direction for dubbing and for video games.
Nice.
Awesome.
Nice.
Very nice.
Yeah. Awesome. So as a voice actress, what are some of the biggest challenges you say that you faced during your career?
Well, it's a kind of there are no guarantees in this industry, so a lot of the time, finding the work has been a big challenge, and there's always an ebb and flow, and there's no guarantee that just because you do something that's really big that there will be consistent work. Arthur and Sagwa were incredible popular shows, but there were many periods in my life where I really didn't have any work. I got other jobs. I worked at cafes, I worked as a waitress, I did all kinds of other things, like a real actor. The job is not a given. And also vocal health. In video games there's a lot of screaming, and I'm very lucky to be part of the union ACTRA here in Canada, which is similar to SAG-AFTRA, but ACTRA Montreal was one of the first offices to really start enforcing and encouraging vocal safety for voice actors, because you hear stories. I think Hugh Jackman just came out recently talking about how doing the voice of Wolverine really damaged his vocal cords, and so
wow.
that's a real thing. Like, I made a joke about not being warmed up earlier and not being able to do like a little high-pitched voice, but that's real. Some people can actually really injure themselves. And so those are some of the pitfalls. The work dries up and maybe your voice cacks out and you can't really produce sound. But we all learn over the years, how to take care of ourselves, lots of water and exercises, and there are things. But yeah, those are challenges. I think that's the main, there's other issues with, diversity, as we've seen on certain big shows like Big Mouth, in the past, like, I just think that there's room now for way more diversity. And I make a point of trying to step away, if there's ever, and like, you know what I mean? Like I've voiced characters that are Black characters, and now I wouldn't voice those characters. I wouldn't want to. I wouldn't feel comfortable. I would want people to be able to have a shot at it, because I've had a big shot at doing a lot of stuff.
Right. It gives some like new talent a chance to
absolutely
kind of step in.
That's vitally important.
For sure.
And I know I'm grateful that the world is changing more and more, but that, and I say that just as a side, like, it's been challenging for the whole vocal industry to kind of wrap their heads around it. But for me, it's always like, yes, of course, this is what we must do. So
definitely,
that's just been something interesting that's cropped up. But yeah, challenge wise, like, there's no guarantee in this industry, and you can't assume that you're gonna get a job. It's show business. It's show business, and it changes.
Showbiz, exactly.
Yeah, showbiz is a tough industry. You have to have a really strong will to keep going in it sometimes. But
so for any people who want to get into the voiceover field, what's the biggest piece of advice that you would give to someone who wants to get into that?
Get really informed on what the industry in your area is like, and get really serious about what your reasons are for doing it.
Yeah, because you don't want to do it just to do it. You want to do it if you have like a legitimate passion for it.
You have to have a passion for it, because it's just because someone's good at it doesn't mean they're going to get a job. you know, and
Right.
in the bigger
Yeah.
cities, in the bigger ports of industry, you know, like there's thousands and thousands of people in big cities who want to do what you're doing. So
Yeah.
you got to get really clear on why you want to do it. If you want to be a star, you can't go into it with that
Yeah.
pushing you. You have to really, yeah, you have to be knowledgeable, you have to have a drive, you have to have a respect for it, and you have to understand that there's heart and reality behind animation. People, I think, don't think just because it's a cartoon, they think, oh, it's easy, or oh, it's silly, it's just silly voices. But you know, there's an authenticity to playing an animated character, and it's the same kind of thing if you were doing a live action film with the camera right in your face. Like there's a reality, and that's what I mean when, you know, we talk about like the intimacy from the voice. Like, yeah, DeeDee's a squirrel puppet, but she's got a big heart, and you know, she has a lot of stuff to say, and you believe that you're DeeDee the squirrel puppet. You believe that you're Fern Walters. You infuse it with life and humanity. And I think some people just think that if they can imitate certain voices, or that they have like a nice voice, sure. I mean, you might be able to get somewhere. It's a lot of it is luck. A lot of it is who you know, unfortunately. You know, I don't know what I would have done if I didn't have parents in the industry. I don't know if I would have gotten onto the same track. I know I would have had a passion for singing and music and acting, but I don't know what my life would have looked at like without that kind of push of privilege. So, you know, get informed, get in touch with people in the industry, talk to people, and make sure you know why you're doing it, because it's a hard road. You know, I've had $0 in my bank account sometimes. It's not a given.
Right.
There's no guarantee in show business.
Definitely.
So it's a bit sobering, even in cartoons, you know. But if you have a love for it, there's always a way. There's always a path. And yeah.
Yeah.
I would say that's sort of the advice that I would have.
Definitely.
Know your whys. Know your
Yes.
why.
First,
Yep.
great advice.
Great advice. So are there any words you'd like to say to those watching or listening who have supported your work over the years?
Thank you. Thank you so much. And I love you, and I love that these funny little moments in time have meaning for so many people, because they were very meaningful for me. And yeah, just keep watching and keep encouraging cartoons to be made and produced. Fight AI. We want humans doing this
Right,
stuff.
yeah.
We want
Yeah.
actual
Right.
humans doing
Yeah.
this work.
The whole AI thing's just
It's
Ugh,
pretty
so
scary.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
we're not there's no, again, I don't know, there's no guarantees in this world, in this new
Oh, man.
evolving techno world. But I think that overall people want humans behind their favorite characters. So
Absolutely.
I think we have a long way to go before we are actually replaced.
Oh yeah, I think
So,
so.
you know,
I think so.
but you know, maybe that's a controversial thing to say, but yeah, I don't think a robot can really replace some element of the human intimate connectivity of a voice coming from a human.
Hmm.
At least I hope
Definitely.
not. Thank you all very
Right.
much for this. It was really, really
Yeah.
nice to get to speak to you. And I hope,
course.
Yeah.
I hope I didn't
And-
disappoint too many people with no
Oh,
merch.
No,
no worries.
No, not at all.
No,
No worries.
no.
I can still hear Sagwa, so
Hmm.
you're
Yeah.
fine.
He's in there somewhere.
Yeah.
So
Definitely.
if people want to connect with you, where can people find you?
They can find me through the website, hollygf.com. I do have a private Instagram, but I'm not very accessible that way. I tend to, you know, if you want to write me an email, use your better judgment. I can't always respond, but
All right, because I'm sure you get like tons.
not tons and tons, you know, but I use it for personal, like I use it for business, and
Mhm.
I have a busy schedule, so I can't always get in touch right away, but it's
Right.
it's definitely nice to hear from people who have appreciated the work in the past.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
you can
Nice.
find me
Yeah.
around on the internet.
Nice. Link to your website will be in the description down below, and
Yes.
to And to kind of end this off, so we ask this question at the end with all of our guests. So of course this podcast is called Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show. In your own words, when you think of nostalgia, what do you think of, or how would you define the word nostalgia?
I think anything that makes you feel warm and fuzzy and comforted and connected to whatever makes you feel good. That's how I can describe nostalgia. I mean, some people say there's a sadness to it, but I just think it's the warm, fuzzy feeling of having an old friend to kind of come back to.
Definitely.
I'm glad I can be your old friend.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And same to you.
Thank you.
Yes. Well, this has been an absolute blast talking to you, Holly.
Yes.
Very nice to talk to you guys.
Blast.
Thanks again.
Thank you. Yes, and thank you so much, for what you've done and be a part of our lives and keep up the great work and see what's next for you.
Thank you.
Yes.
Well, I'll be sure to keep
you
posted, and do keep me posted when this airs, and I'll put it on my Instagram.
Yes,
sure.
and I'm glad that we can say that we are your friend now. So.
Yes, of course. Yes,
Of course.
you guys find me for sure. It's Holly GF. It's Chris. You have me on Instagram, but
yeah, I think I did already follow you on Insta.
You're following. Yeah.
Yes.
I'm very bad with
I'm not yet. I don't think I am yet.
Come on
I'm
over.
WBC fan.
I will.
On Insta.
I will.
Yes.
Okay.
We'll keep in touch, Holly. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Great.
Yes,
Thanks again so much. Take good
Thank
care,
you.
guys.
Yes. Take care. You too. Have a great rest of your day.
Well.
Thank you.
See you, Sagwa.
All right, bye, Holly. Take care.
Bye.
Bye. See ya.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye. Oh man, what a joy that was. Holly's great, and it's goodbye from us as well.
Goodbye from us.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes. So, and as always, remember to keep nostalgia alive, and we'll see you.
Yep, and hope you all enjoyed this episode.
Yes.
And keep on watching more episodes, and you'll
yes,
guys.
a lot of great ones to come, folks.
Yes. So keep your eyes out for that.
Yes.
Yes. Keep your eyes out for that.
And if you're on Spotify and those audio platforms.
Yes.
What are you doing, G? Just be glad you folks didn't see that there. Just if you're listening on audio. Goodbye, folks.
Goodbye, folks. Remember to keep nostalgia alive, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Take care. I want to see you next time. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thank you for tuning in to another wonderful Jake's Happy Nostalgia Show interview. Be sure to follow Jake and the crew on social media and stream the show wherever you find your favorite podcasts. And as always, remember to keep nostalgia alive. Bye-bye.